Audio Jungle. Audio Jungle.
I am the Divine Prince, Ty Emmecca, Pan-African Spiritualist, Practitioner, Author, Advisor, Elagoon, Oloye, Hoodoo, Obeya, Bokur. I reside in this beautiful and legendary historic Treme, New Orleans, Louisiana. So join me as I share food, music, culture, tradition, the rhythms, and the flavor of New Orleans voodoo. Respect the voodoo. Greetings, and salutations, honor and respect, honor and respect, honor and respect. This is the Divine Prince, Pan-African Spiritualist, Practitioner, Author, and Advisor, Elagoon, Oloye, Hoodoo, Obeya, Bokur, sharing with you in all things spiritual, mystical, metaphysical, cosmic, universal, healing and holistic, evolutionary and revolutionary, from a Pan-African Hoodoo world spiritualist perspective, understanding that all is truly and indeed a blessing if you can just see beyond the veils, for it is all just an illusion and a test, and one of the greatest divine mysteries of this life cycle. This is another edition of Revolutionary Hoodoo, New Orleans Voodoo Secrets and Recipes, powered by NONVD, New Orleans National Voodoo Day. And that is New Orleans National Voodoo Day 2026. We invite you to continue to visit our continually updating website at www.vodouday. Again, that's www.voodooday.org. VODOUDAY.org. And we certainly appreciate your continued support, participation, love for this event. I also want to introduce, as always, my beloved co-host, the Queen Mother, Tony Val Martinez. Thank you so much for your continued support and presence here on this weeknight podcast. How are you doing today?
Peace and blessings, beloved. Hello, everyone out there. I'm doing all right. Just doing research in my own little world, basically trying to make sense of this crazy world we didn't fumbled into. Last night we were talking about, getting the kids educated at a young age on EFI, the Orishas, and how, I was looking up cartoons and stuff. I have young grandkids that be at my house like 2 years old, and I really didn't find anything that could hold their attention like the cartoons they look at. But I did start paying closer attention to what she is watching and what does hold her attention. And as I said last night, she came up to me with a wand, a lit up wand, and said, "Bippity bobbity boop, you a pumpkin." And she was disappointed that I didn't turn into a pumpkin. Well, today we watching Mickey Mouse, and he come with a chant to make his clubhouse appear out of thin air. Mishka, Mushka, some stuff they have to repeat, and she knew every word to make his clubhouse appear out of thin air.
Yes,
And I was
indeed.
like, wow, I really ain't been paying attention to this. Now, I did know about the old Sesame Street scene where they sing Mana Mana. And that's a god. You just they had a whole song to him, supposedly some aliens. And I'm just like, we got a big job ahead. I don't think we could get a hold of our kids without having it done daily in the home and us teaching them ourselves on a larger scale than until they in their teens.
Yeah, you're breaking up just a little bit. I'm not sure why, but
Oh,
I, I certainly agree with you 100%. And I must say it yet again, we are going to have to go back to the ways of the old, and for me, I think of particularly the 50s, 60s, 70s. That's relevant, to my particular age group and my experience. But we're going to have to return to a time when we grew our own foods in our community, when we, cared for each other, the young and the old from within our communities, and we educate, and not just, cultural education, but education, English, science, math, foreign languages. We're going to begin to have to redo that again from within our own homes, within our own neighborhoods, within our own communities, because we're going to lose that support as it relates to any government assistance, at least for some time. And we may have become overly reliant on the public school system. We may have become over reliant on other institutions and systems to sort of fix and repair and change what really can only be done personally, individually, at the family level, at the community level, at the grassroots level, in order to create any real lasting holistic change. So I agree with what you're saying, and the bombardment, the best word I can come up with right now, of information from every direction, including our digital devices, is quite overwhelming. And some information is presented as real if you don't know what you're looking at. And I'm not suggesting necessarily AI, just how things are worded, how things are spelled, the emphasis a particular author, writer, creator puts on a particular information, to elicit a response, to elicit likes, or a fear trigger or a humor trigger, and we get lost in the moment in terms of paying attention to what's really
I
in
don't
front of us.
know. I don't know if you are aware of this little bit of information. Um, a senator in Mississippi tried to get a bill passed that put a bounty on so-called illegal immigrants of $1,000 per immigrant. Now, back in the day, they put a bounty on the heads of Native Americans, the US government, because it started in the South and moved out west. The slave owners complained that the Native Americans were stealing, quote unquote, historical quote, stealing their slaves. So a bounty was placed on their heads, and this led to what we know today as scalping. This popular now, they took us on Western. Native Americans did not start the practice of scalping. They started scalping because it was being done to their people, and it was like an eye for an eye type thing. the bounty hunters found it easier than bringing the body into the sheriff's office, because that's who paid them the money. If they could just take the hair, and this is giving me this bill he tried to pass is giving me flashbacks of that era in American history. Also, along with that bill, it was a neighbor against the neighbor. If I knew you were doing something cultural like your house is, which is against what the government says you're allowed to do, I could call them and turn you in and get money for it. This isn't American. This isn't the governmental idea of what is American. This isn't the ideal of what is Christianity.
But it's certainly the ideal historic demonstration of so-called America. The usage of bounties and putting bounties on.
No, I'm talking about Voodoo, Wicca, all of that.
Yeah, but I'm just suggesting that that's not new.
Yeah, but the thing about it is, in 2025, are you going to be thrown into prison because you practice voodoo? Or someone else is a Wiccan? But thankfully, this bill didn't pass. But I feel that we haven't seen the last of it, that it'll come back. It'll come back. I mean, they snatching people off the street that's not in line with their thinking, not criminal, just not in line or speak out against them. I mean, it's getting really scary to think like this is so Hitleresque. I mean, this is how it started.
And
And
again,
people did those things.
I reiterate that this is not new, and we've seen it evolve, change, morph into various forms of demonstration from the dominant group throughout history. So it's certainly not new, and I'm with the present voice in our communities that say, because it's not new to us, we may very well have an extra layer of protection and preparation for such a thing. We certainly have the ability to maneuver under the most oppressive of circumstances. And certainly if our brothers and sisters and cousins of, you know, of Haiti were able to, drum up enough spirit and fire and energy to overcome and overthrow being in the heart of enslavement during a time when, the enslavement of us was globally accepted. Certainly we still possess and can still find that power, those skills within us to make the necessary changes and adaptations within ourselves and our community to not only survive this, but to defeat and overcome this. I'm certainly concerned. I don't want to, belittle your natural concern, particularly as a matriarch, and a mother. But it's just not new. It's just not
No, it's
new.
not new, but to think that in this day and age, we would be dealing with something like this again. While the rest of the world is trying to move forward, and the United States is going back hundreds of years.
Yeah, ideally, I totally understand what you're saying. I think too, though, sometimes we get the sense that the grass is green on the other side. The other countries are somehow getting it right, and America is just destined for doom and gloom. I've noticed this sudden interest and trend in everything China. And I think there's a degree of manipulation even within that. Certainly, China's not going to give up their number one customer, which is the Western shopper, and our need to shop and buy and get the newest thing or get the discounted thing. But I also think that there's a spiritual warfare, an intellectual warfare, a mental warfare also going on right now involving these governments and these systems. So there's some manipulation happening there, and it's beginning to show up even in social media. I remember when they banned TikTok several months back, and people jumped on the red bandwagon, and some of you are still there. But you, as I said then, willingly given your information, your statistics, your habits to this supposed communist government. Whereas with social media sites like TikTok, Facebook, and the like, there's always been, at least in my mind, some universal sort of agreement that we understood that to some degree our information was being used, sold, uh, pilfered, but now we're just willing to do so in the name of what? Rebellion? In the name of, you know, being contrary? I don't know. And I don't profess to have the answer. I really don't. But I see what you're seeing, and I'm sure there are others listening who do as well, and may have their own interpretation of what's happening and what's going on. But I'm just really skeptical about how quickly and easily we are willing to, and certainly I don't mean you or I, but just the American
Populace.
conversation, yeah, is willing to throw the baby out with the bathwater. When it comes to some of these conspiracies, there's
Well,
nothing.
after
There's never any.
Katrina, I felt my information was God knows who, where it was after Katrina, because
Hmm.
we know all the
Hmm.
arrests that came after, people stealing people's social security numbers and doing this, that, and the other thing with it.
And the PPP loans. I mean, we're seeing that again. People who are being arrested, still being investigated, still till this present day, as it relates to the whole PPP loan thing. So I get it. You know, People find themselves in what they might consider to be desperate circumstances. We certainly see that in hoodoo, root work, conjure, voodoo, Christianity, religion, spirituality. People who find themselves in what they interpret to be desperate circumstances, and then seek desperate or extreme measures, or the quick fix, the quote unquote spell, if you will, that defines itself as magical, but also as temporary, to sort of temporarily ease the pain or otherwise discomfort of a particular scenario. And it's like aspirin. You're still not getting to the root of the problem. You're still not fixing the problem. And so in going back to what you talked about just a little bit earlier about, educating our children and young people and the generations that are coming behind us really has to become something that someone out there listening, commits to do, makes it their vocation to do. We're not all called to do the same thing. We're not all called to bear arms. We're not all called to, calculate math, divide up science, but we all have divine gifts, skills, abilities, talents that could be utilized, in some of these endeavors if we are just creative about our position in them, our response to them, and then our ability to organize, plan, um, get others to come together in certain circumstances to assist us in moving these ideals forward. Anything we've ever done collectively, and as a group, as a community, no matter how fractured we might be, at a personal level, has been successful. And not just the protests and the boycotts, but anything that we've, clearly set our minds to do, have had successful and profound effects. I think apathy is our biggest demon, our biggest, dark magic, witchcraft is apathy and the ability for apathy to be triggered, to be invoked in a person, in a group, in a community that causes you to shut down your ability to think things through clearly, to access your creative mind, your creative imagination, to find solutions to find adjustments to conflicts. And we see it in our relationships, whether we're talking about marriages or the dating, world, our politics, um, and how we communicate with each other, in these virtual spaces. And so there should still be room for growth, for empathy, for sympathy. Now, I'm not for abuse. I never say set yourself up to be abused, accept abuse. Certainly, when we look at the very building blocks, foundations of hoodoo, voodoo, root work, conjure in the so-called New World, it was a direct revolutionary response to the living conditions that we were forced under. Even before we became, particularly political, or quote unquote religious and segmented, in our community views. I've got to really find a way to shorten my responses under this new 30-minute podcast schedule because some of these questions that, require, deserve some exploration, and I invite those who are listening, those who show up in the chat, those who participate even in the archive to do some research, do some homework, turn on your mics, turn on your cameras, join this conversation. These topics won't disappear, won't go away. They reemerge with every generation, with each generation, until we find solutions that are lasting and that are foundational. But until then, we'll always find ourselves, repeating the conversation about race, about politics, about enslavement of the mind and the body, until we choose to find solutions that allow us to live. Uh, War is not always the only answer, the only response. You know what I mean?
Yeah, we feel that way, but unfortunately, we live in a country where a large majority see that as the only way. So
Yeah, I
And
find that interesting. I see the conversation, but I don't often see the preparation for that reality. I mean, if that's what they really believe, I'm not even seeing a preparation for that.
well, they believe it. I see it. It's the same old thing that happened a few years ago. I mean, the constant poking the bear, doing unnecessary stuff, making unnecessary rules, you know, trying yourself,
Mm-hmm.
putting it out there like the thing with the senator about the bounty hunters. Of course, other people gonna rise up against the bounty hunters. I mean, brother against brother. This one is for and this one is against. The last time that happened, we ended up with a civil war.
Oh yeah.
So I see it. I see maybe because I read so many books, maybe because I've read Mein Kampf, which is the book that Hitler wrote, maybe because I read Machiavelli and didn't just take it as I want to find out who Machiavelli was and what his ideas and thoughts were.
Mm-hmm.
So I
Mm-hmm.
see it trying to come up from under its rock. But of course, due to certain laws and stuff, they just can't come straight out. Maybe that's why 47 is in office, because he's the only fool to keep pushing it. They could find to push it and push it and push it that had a large base. I mean, I don't understand. I gotta go research the mind of people that would become a part of a cult.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Because how can you follow someone who sits in front of cameras and lies to your face and lies about something that deep down inside he's lying, but you still go along with the lie? What are you getting out of it? What are you looking for? Do you think he can give you?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I mean, the whole world knows when he told President Zelensky of Ukraine that he started the war. Every country in the world knew that was a lie and they called him on it. It was talked about all in social media, all in the news media. And then yesterday, he sits there, looks straight in the camera, and says the same lie again. What people put up with this?
And you know we're quickly running out of time, but
Yeah, I
I
know.
agree with you in that. My question again is, how do we respond? What are we going to do individually, collectively, communally, in terms of response? And are we just going to wait and be reactionary? Wait until the bottom falls out, wait until, the calamity, the next major calamity happens, and then, try to scramble and figure it out. What exactly are we going to do? And
Well,
in terms of,
I'm trying
yeah,
to educate as many people as I can, hoping at some point a word that I say will trigger their senses to say, hold up, that makes more sense. So they could be reprogrammed or something. I
yeah,
don't know. I'm
that
still
that
trying
just
to
sounds
figure
like,
it out.
yeah, that just seems like such a large scale job.
Yes, it is.
In a lot of people to have to affect in some way. And I do believe that even on a smaller scale, just again within our own houses, our own communities, we can indeed begin to build a new sense of village of like-minded individuals, even globally by way of technology, and begin to build a network of support that is reliable, that is controlled and operated by those of us who care, about these issues. Again, my concern is that we wait until calamity happens, the bottom drops out, and then we pass the basket, and beg for donations. When we clearly have the time and the information now to plan for these things. But I certainly appreciate your participation and your support in the daily podcast. I invite my chat. Greetings, Daniel Neal. Greetings, Ashley Anthony, Alexis Williams, Damood. Thank you all for coming through in the chat. Those who are listening by way of various social media outlets, we certainly appreciate you. Invite you to join us here for 30 minutes, 9 p.m. U.S. Central Standard Time for Revolutionary Hoodoo, New Orleans Voodoo Secrets and Recipes, powered by NONVD, New Orleans National Voodoo Day. Please continue to visit us and support us at www.vodouday.org. There will be updates to the website coming as we begin to upload information about next year's New Orleans National Voodoo Day, year 3. All is truly and indeed a blessing. Enjoy your day. Until tomorrow, remembering that all is a blessing, and whatever you do, respect the voodoo. Good night, Tony.
Good night, everyone. Have a blessed night. See you tomorrow.
At the beginning of this, maybe I was more skeptical. As the days have gone on, I'm not sure what I think anymore.
I felt that maybe it wouldn't affect me if I personally didn't believe in it.
So, knowing what you know now, would you still get cursed?
I'm seeking out a curse, a hex to put on myself.
A curse could end your life. You're literally begging the devil to knock on your door just to prove to you that God's real.
He could curse you with stupidity, but we think you got that down.
Despite the warnings, I'm investigating the real-world effects of dark magic.
Looks like you have a lot of love and a lot of opportunity. You are going to cause damage to that.
How do you feel after doing this?
Evil.
That must be quite seductive.
That's the power you're calling on. The devil, right? Quite seductive.
I'm going to enter into a pact with Satan.
Señor Satán, Lucifer, presentamos a este hermano. Con tu fuego purifica.
Wyong is pretty much the epicenter of all black magic. People are very scared to even talk about it.
Y'all better not call me at 2 o'clock in the morning talking about this man is dead. I don't want to hear that.
I have this physical feeling that something bad is coming. What have I done?
You're going to have to find faith in this in order to undo it.